The great chamber of the Galactic Federation. Council stretched out like a vast arena on the planet Xerion Prime. 47 different species had gathered here today, their representatives sitting in curved rows that rose up toward the crystalline ceiling. The air hummed with the sound of different languages being translated through neural implants, creating a constant buzz of alien voices mixing together. Ambassador Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his blue-scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled crowd as he prepared to speak. Behind him, a holographic display showed star charts and military statistics that would support his proposal. Esteemed colleagues, Vextar began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. Today I bring before you a matter of galactic security and proper resource allocation. The chamber quieted slightly, though several representatives continued their side conversations. The crystalline hierarchy's speaker, a towering being of living mineral named Thelmos, resonated with harmonic tones that indicated mild interest. The Predator Cast's Commander Kyrith drummed his four-clawed hands against his console in an impatient rhythm. I propose we implement Restriction Protocol 7 Alpha on the species known as humans from the Sol System, Vextar announced with barely concealed satisfaction. The reaction was immediate and predictable. A wave of chittering, clicking, and various forms of alien laughter swept through the chamber. The Aquatic Consortium's representative made bubbling sounds that translated as amusement, while the Insectoid Collective's delegates clicked their mandibles in what passed for chuckling. Among their kind, Thelmos' crystalline form rang like a bell as he expressed his disbelief. The soft-skinned bipeds from that small yellow star system? They have barely achieved faster-than-light travel. What possible concern could they represent to our military operations? This brought another round of laughter from the assembled delegates. Commander Kyrith stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across several nearby seats. I have personally reviewed their combat records from their homeworld conflicts, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of a born predator. They use primitive chemical propulsion weapons, possess no energy shielding technology, and show no evidence of telepathic battle coordination. Precisely my point, Vextar replied, raising one scaled hand to quiet the chamber. Their recent application to join our military coalition has raised certain concerns among my people. While we appreciate their enthusiasm for participating in galactic defense, their physical limitations make them unsuitable for real combat situations. Ambassador Kalanara of the Ethereal Collective flickered in and out of visible spectrum as she spoke. Have we not always welcomed new species into our military ranks? What makes these humans different? Vextar activated his holographic display, showing footage from various human conflicts. The images showed soldiers running across battlefields while explosions erupted around them, their bodies protected only by crude metal armor and fabric uniforms. Observe their tactical approaches, he said, pointing to the footage. They rely entirely on line-of-sight weapons that require direct physical aim. They have no force fields, no plasma weaponry, no gravitational manipulation devices. The chamber watched as human soldiers dove behind concrete barriers and fired their chemical weapons at enemies across vast distances. Some delegates made sounds of amazement at what they perceived as primitive brutality. Look at their casualty rates, Vextar continued, bringing up statistical data. In their major conflicts, they regularly accept losses that would be considered catastrophic by our standards. Their medical technology cannot regenerate limbs or restore brain function. When they are injured, they often remain permanently damaged. Commander Kyrith nodded approvingly. Their lack of natural armor or enhanced reflexes makes them vulnerable to even the most basic energy weapons. A single plasma bolt would likely prove fatal to most of their warriors. Furthermore, Vextar added, their psychological profiles show concerning tendencies. They exhibit what their own scientists call pack bonding behavior, forming emotional attachments to their fellow soldiers that can compromise tactical decision-making. They have been observed risking entire missions to recover single wounded individuals. This statement brought murmurs of confusion from many delegates. The concept of valuing individual lives over mission success was foreign to most galactic military traditions. Delegate Zorpak of the Silicon Confederation buzzed electronically as he processed this information. Are you suggesting they prioritize sentiment over efficiency? Exactly, Vexstar confirmed. Their military doctrine includes provisions for what they call leave no one behind policies. They will expend significant resources and endanger multiple lives to retrieve fallen comrades, even when tactical logic suggests withdrawal. The hive mind's representative, speaking through thousands of small drones, voiced their collective confusion. This behavior pattern seems counterproductive to successful military operations. How did such a species develop space travel capabilities? Vexstar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. An excellent question. Our analysis suggests they succeeded through persistence rather than intelligence. They appear willing to attempt dangerous or impossible tasks repeatedly until they achieve success, regardless of cost. Sounds like they might be useful as cannon fodder, suggested one delegate from the back rows, causing another wave of laughter. That would be cruel, Vexstar replied with mock concern. These beings appear to experience physical pain and emotional distress in ways similar to our own species. Deliberately placing them in situations where they face certain death would violate our ethical guidelines regarding the treatment of developing civilizations. Ambassador Relther of the Energy Beings Council flickered with patterns that indicated agreement. Perhaps we should consider this restriction as a protective measure. We would not send younglings into battle. Why should we send a species that lacks proper evolutionary development for warfare? The debate continued for several hours, with various delegates offering their opinions on human capabilities and limitations. Some pointed out that humans had shown remarkable creativity in their technological development, while others emphasized their obvious physical weaknesses compared to established galactic military forces. Finally, Vexstar called for a formal vote. All those in favor of implementing Restriction Protocol 7 Alpha, preventing human participation in all Galactic Federation military operations, please indicate your approval. The vote was overwhelming. 43 delegates voted in favor, with only 4 abstentions and no votes against the measure. The chamber erupted in satisfied chatter as the decision was recorded in official Federation records. Let the record show, announced the Council Secretary, that as of this date, the species known as humans from the Sol system are classified as physically insufficient for galactic warfare standards and are hereby prohibited from participating in any military operations sanctioned by the Galactic Federation. The decision was transmitted immediately to Earth's newly established embassy through quantum communication arrays. On the distant blue-green world, the message would arrive within hours, carrying news that would reshape humanity's relationship with the galaxy. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many continued discussing the day's decision with amusement. The idea that such primitive beings had even considered joining galactic military operations seemed laughable to most of them. None of them suspected that their decision would soon prove to be the greatest miscalculation in galactic history. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Federation Council made their decision about human military participation, and Emperor Zarthul of the Zephyrian Empire was facing the worst crisis in his people's 1,000-year history. He paced frantically across the polished floor of his war room, his blue scales rippling with stress patterns that his advisors had learned to fear. The holographic displays surrounding the chamber showed nothing but devastation. Red indicators marked fallen colonies, while orange symbols represented worlds under attack. The enemy had appeared from the dark spaces between galaxies, arriving without warning and striking with overwhelming force. "How many ships have we lost in the last cycle?" Zarthul demanded, his yellow eyes fixed on Admiral Nexius, his most trusted military commander. Admiral Nexius consulted his datapad, his expression grim. 17 battle cruisers, 43 destroyers, and countless fighter craft, my lord. The enemy's adaptive shielding technology makes our energy weapons nearly useless after the first few shots. Each engagement becomes progressively more difficult as their defenses learn to counter our attack patterns. The Emperor's claws scraped against the metal railing as he gripped it tightly. The Void Swarm had emerged from the darkness 3 weeks ago, their biomechanical ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They consumed everything in their path, turning conquered worlds into breeding grounds for more of their kind. "What about our boarding parties?" Zarthul asked, though he already knew the answer from his admiral's expression. "Complete failures, sir," Nexius replied heavily. "The mechanical defenders aboard their vessels are specifically designed to counter our traditional boarding tactics. Our energy weapons prove ineffective against their armor, and their response time to our assault patterns is impossibly fast. We have lost every boarding team we have sent." Counselor Mordak, the Emperor's chief advisor, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "My lord, perhaps we should request assistance from the Federation fleet. Surely our allies will respond to such a grave threat." Admiral Nexius shook his head before the Emperor could respond. "I have already sent emergency requests to all Federation members. The crystalline hierarchy claims their ships are too slow to reach our territory in time. The Predator caste refuses to assist, saying it would damage their warrior honor to help us after we questioned their battle tactics during the trade negotiations last cycle." "What about the other species?" the Emperor asked desperately. "The energy beings cannot operate effectively in normal space for extended periods. The aquatic consortium ships are not designed for combat operations. The Silicon Confederation considers this a biological matter outside their area of concern." Nexius paused, checking his communications. "Most other species are either too distant or claim they lack the military resources to mount an effective response." Emperor Zarthul slammed his fist against the display console, causing several holographic images to flicker. "So we stand alone against an enemy that grows stronger with each world they consume." The tactical display updated with new information, showing 3 more colonies under direct assault. The red symbols representing Void Swarm forces were spreading across Zephyrian space like a plague, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. Meanwhile, millions of miles away in the same star system, Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Federation observation vessel Concordance. The human ship had been grudgingly allowed to monitor the conflict for what the Federation termed educational purposes, though everyone understood it was really just a way to keep the banned species out of direct involvement. "Sir, I'm receiving multiple distress calls from the Zephyrian colonies," reported Lieutenant Amy Chun from her communication station. Her voice carried the tension that had been building among the human crew as they watched the destruction. Unfold.Ryan studied the tactical display showing the positions of both fleets. The Zephyrian forces were clearly outmatched, their traditional energy-based weapons proving less effective with each engagement as the Void Swarm's adaptive technology learned to counter them. "Any response from Federation Command?" Ryan asked. His first officer, Commander Noah Williams. Noah checked his communications panel and shook his head. "Nothing official, sir. The Federation ships are maintaining their distance, claiming they need more time to analyze the enemy's capabilities before committing to engagement." Ryan watched as another Zephyrian cruiser exploded on the display, its energy shields finally overwhelmed by the relentless assault from 3 Void Swarm vessels. The alien ship's crew of 800 had just died while the galaxy's most powerful military alliance debated strategy. How long until the main Void Swarm fleet reaches the civilian colonies? Ryan asked. Lieutenant Bobby Kim, their tactical officer, ran quick calculations on his console. At their current rate of advance, approximately 18 hours, sir. The Zephyrian defensive fleet won't be able to stop them. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 40,000 civilian Zephyrians lived on those colonies, including families, children, and elderly citizens who had no way to defend themselves against the mechanical horrors approaching their worlds. Sir, Amy called out, I'm picking up encrypted Zephyrian military transmissions. They're requesting immediate emergency assistance from any available Federation vessels. Ryan exchanged glances with Noah, both men understanding the impossible situation they faced. Federation regulations strictly prohibited human involvement in military operations, but they were watching a genocide unfold in real time. What's the response time for the nearest Federation combat vessels? Ryan asked. The crystalline ships are still 4 days away at maximum speed, Noah reported. The Predator cast forces are closer, but they've made it clear they won't intervene. Ryan walked to the main view screen, where the distant flashes of battle lit up the darkness of space. Each flash represented weapons fire, explosions, and very likely the deaths of sentient beings who had committed no crime other than existing in the path of an unstoppable enemy. Amy, open a secure channel to Earth Command, he ordered finally. Priority Alpha transmission. Sir, are you sure? Noah asked quietly. If we're caught interfering in this conflict, it could mean court-martial for all of us. Ryan continued staring at the view screen, where another Zephyrian ship had just gone. Dark. Noah, how many people are we talking about on those colonies? Intelligence estimates put the total civilian population at around 40,000. Sir, 40,000 lives, Ryan repeated softly. Amy, establish that connection to Admiral Morrison. Tell him we have a developing humanitarian crisis that requires immediate consultation. As the communications officer worked to establish the encrypted link to Earth, Ryan made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He was about to recommend that humanity violate direct Federation orders, risk their newly established diplomatic relationships, and potentially face severe consequences from the galactic community. But 40,000 innocent civilians were about to die while the galaxy's military powers argued about jurisdiction and honor. Sometimes, Ryan thought, doing the right thing meant ignoring the rules entirely. The connection to Earth established with a soft chime, and Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the secure communication screen. Ryan took a deep breath and began explaining the situation that would soon test everything the galaxy thought it knew about human nature. Deep within Earth's military command center, Admiral Jake Morrison stood before a massive holographic display that showed the Zephyrian star system in devastating detail. Red markers indicated void swarm positions, while blue symbols represented the rapidly diminishing Zephyrian fleet. The tactical situation was clear to everyone in the room, and it was hopeless. Gentlemen, ladies, Jake began, addressing the assembled group of Earth's top military officers. Officially, we cannot intervene in this conflict. The Federation has made it clear that human participation in military operations is strictly forbidden. Colonel Sam Carter, head of the Marine Space Division, leaned forward in his chair. His scarred face showed the skepticism that many of the officers felt about Federation politics. What are you saying, sir? That we just watch 40,000 civilians get slaughtered while the galaxy's finest military minds debate proper protocol? Jake turned away from the display and faced his officers directly. I'm saying that sometimes doing what's right matters more than following orders. The Federation banned us from military operations because they think we're too primitive, too weak, too emotional to be effective in modern warfare. Captain Elena Rodriguez, commander of the stealth cruiser Defiance, spoke up from her position near the back of the room. With respect, sir, what exactly are you proposing? Even if we ignore Federation orders, we're talking about one ship against an entire alien fleet that's already destroyed dozens of Zephyrian vessels. That's exactly what I'm proposing. Jake replied with a slight smile. Captain Rodriguez, how quickly can you get the Defiance to the Zephyrian system using our quantum drive technology? Alana calculated quickly in her head, running through fuel consumption rates and hyperspace jump coordinates. 6 hours at maximum. Speed, sir. But if we're detected by Federation monitoring stations or void swarm sensors, the diplomatic consequences could be severe, Dr. Alex Turner, the mission's chief science advisor, stepped forward with a datapad in his hands. Actually, Captain, I don't think detection will be a problem. I've been analyzing the intercepted data from the void swarm encounters, and their sensor technology operates on completely different principles than ours. Explain, Jake ordered. Alex activated his own holographic display, showing technical readouts from the alien ships. The void swarm vessels are designed to detect and counter energy-based weapons and shielding systems. Their sensors are calibrated to identify plasma signatures, gravitational distortions, and telepathic communications. But our technology operates on fundamentally different principles. Colonel Carter studied the data with interest. You're talking about our kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. Exactly, Alex confirmed. While the galaxy has moved toward energy-based warfare, we've continued developing kinetic projectile systems and chemical explosives. To the void swarm sensors, our weapons would appear as primitive as throwing rocks. Jake nodded approvingly. This was exactly the kind of unconventional thinking that had always made humans dangerous opponents. Colonel Carter, select your best people for a boarding operation. Full environmental suits, kinetic weapons only, and prepare for close quarters. Combat in an alien environment. Sam Carter's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that had made him legendary among Earth's special forces. How many men are we talking about, sir? 50 of your best operators, Jake replied. We're going to board their command ship and eliminate their control systems from the inside. If we can disrupt their coordination, the Zephyrian fleet might have a chance to regroup. As the human officers began planning their unauthorized mission, the situation in the Zephyrian system continued to deteriorate. Emperor Zarthul received increasingly desperate reports from his remaining commanders as colony after colony fell to the relentless advance of the void swarm. The evacuation ships from Zephyr 7 are requesting immediate escort, Admiral Nexius reported, his voice strained with exhaustion. But the enemy has established a complete blockade around the planet. Any rescue vessel we send is destroyed before it can reach the surface. The Emperor stared at the tactical display, showing the positions of his remaining ships. Less than 30 vessels remained from a fleet that had once numbered in the hundreds. How long before they reached the main colony worlds? 14 hours, my lord, Nexius replied grimly. Our defensive installations are already under bombardment. The civilian shelters won't protect them from the kind of weapons these creatures use. In the Federation Council chambers on Zarian Prime, an emergency session had been called to address the crisis. However, the assembled delegates seemed more concerned with maintaining their political positions than actually solving the problem. Ambassador Vexstar stood at the central podium, his blue scales now pale with stress. Honored colleagues, the Zephyrian Empire formally requests immediate military assistance under Article 12 of the Mutual Defense Compact. Court singer Thelmos resonated with harmonic disapproval. The Zephyrians have consistently rejected our tactical advice and military doctrine reforms. Perhaps this crisis will teach them the value of proper strategic planning. Commander Kyreth of the Predator caste crossed his forearms in a gesture of dismissal. Let them prove their strength in battle. If they cannot defend their territory against these creatures, perhaps they do not deserve to hold it. You're talking about genocide, Vextar protested, his voice rising with desperation. 40,000 civilian lives hang in the balance. Delegate. More paths of the Energy Beings Council flickered with patterns that indicated cold calculation. The Federation cannot risk its resources on what may be a lost cause. Our primary duty is to protect the stability of the galactic community. Meanwhile, aboard the human stealth cruiser Defiance, Captain Elena Rodriguez watched her crew make final preparations for the most dangerous mission in human history. The ship had already entered hyperspace, racing toward a confrontation that would either save thousands of lives or result in humanity's complete expulsion from galactic society. Colonel Sam Carter moved through the deployment bay, checking the equipment of his strike team. 50 Special Forces operators, each one a veteran of Earth's most challenging military operations, prepared their weapons and armor systems. Unlike the energy weapons favored by galactic militaries, their equipment consisted of kinetic rifles that fired solid projectiles at hypersonic velocities, chemical explosives that created devastating shockwaves, and cutting tools that used focused plasma beams to slice through metal. "Listen up," Carter addressed his troops as they gathered around him. "We're about to attempt something that every expert in the galaxy says is impossible. These void swarm ships have adaptive defenses that learn from every attack, mechanical soldiers that never tire or retreat, and weapons that can tear apart energy shields like paper." The soldiers listened intently, their faces showing the kind of calm focus that came from years of training for impossible missions. "But here's what they don't know about us," Carter continued with a fierce grin. "We don't use energy shields. We don't rely on predictable attack patterns. And we sure as hell don't give up just because something looks impossible, Sergeant Danny." Lee raised his hand. "What's our primary objective, sir?" "Simple," Carter replied. "We're going to board their command ship, fight our way to their control center, and blow it to pieces with good old-fashioned explosives." Questions? There were no questions. There never were when humanity decided to do something that everyone else considered suicide. The human stealth cruiser Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system, its advanced cloaking technology immediately rendering it invisible to conventional detection systems. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display that showed the devastating battle unfolding ahead of them. The scene was worse than their intelligence reports had suggested. Massive biomechanical ships, each one larger than a city block, moved through space like predatory creatures hunting their prey. Their hulls pulsed with organic patterns, while mechanical weapon systems tracked and destroyed every Zephyrian vessel that came within range. "Bobby, give me a detailed scan of their formation," Elena ordered her sensor operator, Lieutenant Bobby Kim. Bobby worked his controls with practiced efficiency, his instruments cutting through the electromagnetic chaos of the battle zone. "Mom, I'm reading 12 primary assault vessels, each approximately 2 kilometers in length. They're supported by dozens of smaller attack craft that appear to be launched from internal bays. What about their weapons?" Elena asked. "Energy-based systems primarily, but they're adaptive," Bobby replied, highlighting specific signatures on his display. Each shot seems to adjust its frequency and power output based on the target's defensive systems. The Zephyrian shields are becoming less effective with every exchange. Elena nodded grimly. This confirmed what their scientists had theorized about void swarm technology. The aliens had created weapons that learned from each encounter, becoming more deadly as battles progressed. In the deployment bay, Colonel Sam Carter finished his final briefing with the strike team. 50 of Earth's finest Special Forces operators stood before him, their black armor gleaming under the harsh lighting. Each soldier carried a kinetic rifle, capable of firing solid projectiles at speeds that could punch through most known materials, along with chemical explosives and cutting tools that had proven effective in countless Earth conflicts. Remember. People, Carter said, his voice carrying clearly through their helmet communications. These things have never faced kinetic weapons or chemical explosives. Their adaptive systems are designed to counter energy-based attacks, not good old-fashioned bullets and bombs. Sergeant Lisa Park checked her weapon one final time, ensuring the magazine was properly seated and the targeting system was calibrated. She had fought in the Martian border wars and the Europa uprising, but this would be her first engagement against truly alien enemies. "How do we get aboard their ship, sir?" asked Private Joe Martinez, a demolitions expert whose specialty was making things explode in confined spaces. Carter smiled with the kind of confidence that had carried human warriors through impossible odds for millennia. "We're going in dark, Martinez. Personal thruster packs, no energy signatures, approaching through the debris field of destroyed ships." The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of using traditional boarding craft that would be detected and destroyed by the Void Swarm's defensive systems, the human soldiers would launch themselves directly from the Defiance using individual thruster packs. They would navigate through the wreckage of the battle, using the destroyed Zephyrian vessels as cover until they could reach the enemy command ship. "Launch in 60 seconds, Elena announced over the ship's communication system. The strike team moved to the airlock, their movements coordinated through years of training together. Each soldier activated their personal life support systems and checked their thruster pack fuel levels. They would have one chance to reach the target, and failure would mean floating in space until their oxygen ran out. 30 seconds, Elena called out. Carter positioned himself at the front of the group, his rifle secured across his chest and his explosive charges distributed around his armor. Behind him, 49 other soldiers prepared to attempt something that no species in galactic history had ever tried. 10 seconds, the airlock cycled open, revealing the star-filled darkness of space. In the distance, energy weapons flashed like deadly lightning as the Zephyrian fleet made its final desperate stand against the approaching Void Swarm. Go! The human soldiers launched themselves into space, their thruster packs pushing them away from the Defiance in a carefully calculated trajectory. To any observer, they would appear as tiny dark objects moving through the debris field, indistinguishable from the countless pieces of wreckage floating through the battle zone. Carter led the formation, navigating between the twisted remains of a Zephyrian cruiser while monitoring his team's positions on his helmet display. The Void Swarm command ship loomed ahead of them, its biomechanical hull pulsing with alien energy patterns. "Target the breach in Section 7, he transmitted to his team, indicating a damaged area where Zephyrian weapons had torn through the ship's outer hull. The soldiers adjusted their approach vectors, using their thruster packs to guide themselves toward the opening. As they drew closer, they could see the internal structure of the alien vessel, its corridors and chambers arranged in patterns that followed no human architectural logic. "Cutting charges ready," reported Sergeant Danny Lee, the team's breach specialist. The strike team reached the damaged hull section and quickly deployed their cutting tools, widening the opening until it could accommodate their armored forms. One by one, they slipped inside the alien ship, their boots magnetizing to the metal deck plates as they established their footing in the vessel's artificial gravity. The interior of the Void Swarm ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. Organic curves blended seamlessly with mechanical components, creating corridors that seemed to pulse with their own life. Bioluminescent strips provided dim lighting that cast strange shadows on the walls. "Movement ahead," whispered Private Martinez, raising his rifle toward a junction in the corridor. The mechanical defenders of the ship approached with measured steps, their metallic forms designed for optimal combat efficiency. They carried energy weapons that had proven devastatingly effective against Zephyrian boarding parties, and their armor plating had been specifically engineered to absorb and deflect plasma-based attacks, but they had never encountered humans. Sergeant. Park opened fire first, her kinetic rifle sending a stream of solid projectiles down the corridor at hypersonic velocity. The mechanical defenders, programmed to respond to energy weapon signatures and deploy appropriate countermeasures, were completely unprepared for physical projectiles that simply punched through their armor plating. The lead defender staggered as multiple rounds tore through its chest section, sparks flying from damaged internal systems. Its adaptive shielding, designed to deflect energy beams, provided no protection against solid metal traveling at several times the speed of sound. "Keep moving," Carter ordered, leading his team deeper into the ship while the mechanical defenders struggled to process this unprecedented form of attack. Behind them, more defenders emerged from side passages, their weapons charging with the distinctive whine of energy-based systems. But the humans were already past them, using speed and momentum to avoid prolonged engagements while advancing toward their primary objective. Private Martinez tossed a chemical explosive around a corner, the device detonating with a thunderous roar that sent shockwaves through the ship's internal structure. The mechanical defenders, designed to withstand energy weapon overloads, were torn apart by the simple force of the chemical explosion. "Their command center should be 3 levels up," Carter announced, checking his scanner readings against the ship's layout. The human strike team fought their way through corridor after corridor, leaving a trail of destroyed mechanical defenders in their wake. The Void Swarm's adaptive technology, so effective against conventional galactic warfare, proved useless against humanity's preference for kinetic force and chemical explosives. Within 30 minutes of boarding, they had reached the ship's central command chamber, where the alien control systems coordinated the entire fleet's operations. Carter placed the final charges while his team established a defensive perimeter. "Charges set," he announced. "Time to leave." But as they prepared to withdraw, none of them realized that their entire assault had been recorded by the ship's internal monitoring systems, creating footage that would soon change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. The explosion of the Void Swarm command ship sent shockwaves through both fleets, its massive biomechanical hull tearing apart from the inside as Colonel Carter's chemical explosives detonated in sequence. Emperor Zarthul watched from his flagships bridge as the alien vessel, which had seemed indestructible moments before, broke apart in a brilliant flash of light and debris. "What happened?" the Emperor demanded, his yellow eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Did one of our boarding parties finally succeed?" Admiral Nexius shook his head in confusion, checking his communications with all Zephyrian military units. "Negative, my lord. All our boarding teams were eliminated hours ago." This explosion came from an unknown source, across the battle zone. The remaining Void Swarm vessels began exhibiting signs of confusion and disorganization. Without their command ship's coordination signals, the smaller attack craft started flying in random patterns while the larger vessels slowed their advance toward the Zephyrian colonies. "They're retreating," whispered one of the bridge officers, hardly daring to believe what the sensors were showing. Indeed, the Void Swarm fleet was pulling back toward the edge of the star system, their biomechanical ships moving with the sluggish uncertainty of creatures that had suddenly lost their way. Guiding intelligence. Within an hour, the entire alien armada had disappeared into the darkness between stars, leaving behind only wreckage and the stunned survivors of what should have been a massacre. The answer to the mystery came from an unexpected source. As the Void Swarm retreated, their final transmission burst across all communication frequencies, broadcasting on every channel simultaneously. The message contained internal security footage from their destroyed command ship, apparently intended as a warning to other species about the new threat they had encountered. In the Federation Council chambers on Zarian Prime, Ambassador Vextar called for an emergency session as soon as the transmission was received. The assembled delegates, many of whom had been celebrating their decision to avoid involvement in the Zephyrian crisis, now gathered with growing unease as they prepared to view the alien footage. "Fellow counselors," Vexstar announced, his blue scales now showing patterns of deep concern, "we have received disturbing intelligence regarding the resolution of the Zephyrian conflict. I believe all of you need to observe this recording." The holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing grainy footage from inside the Void Swarm command vessel. The assembled aliens watched in stunned silence as armored figures moved through the ship's corridors with deadly efficiency, their movements unlike anything in conventional galactic military doctrine. "Pause the recording," commanded Court Singer. Thelnos, his crystalline form resonating with frequencies that indicated extreme confusion. "Replay that sequence where the intruders engaged the mechanical defenders." The footage showed Sergeant Lisa Park eliminating 3 alien defenders with precise shots from her kinetic rifle, the solid projectiles punching through armor that had been designed to resist energy weapons. The mechanical beings, programmed to counter plasma bolts and force beams, fell like broken toys before her assault. Commander Kyreth of the Predator caste leaned forward, his forearms gripping his console, as his predatory instincts recognized something both familiar and alien in the recording. They move like natural hunters, but their weapons produce no energy signatures. Those projectiles appear to be solid matter launched at extreme velocity. The recording continued, showing Private Joe Martinez's explosive charge tearing through bulkheads that had resisted Zephyrian energy weapons for hours. The chemical detonation created a shockwave that ripped through the ship's internal structure, demonstrating the devastating effectiveness of primitive explosive technology against advanced alien defenses. "They are using chemical explosives," whispered Ambassador Veltar of the Aquatic Consortium, her voice barely audible through the translation system. "Crude chemical reactions that produce force through molecular expansion." The most shocking sequence showed the human strike team in the command center, methodically placing their explosive charges while the ship's mechanical defenders lay scattered around them like discarded machinery. The timestamp indicated that the entire operation had taken less than 45 minutes. Delegate Zor Pak of the Silicon Confederation processed the information with electronic buzzing sounds. These beings accomplished what an entire Zephyrian battle fleet could not achieve. It penetrated adaptive defenses, eliminated mechanical warriors, and destroyed a command vessel using primitive technology. Vexstar struggled to maintain his composure as the implications of what they were witnessing became clear. "These humans that we banned from military operations have just demonstrated combat capabilities that exceed our most optimistic projections. They succeeded where our most advanced species failed." The chamber fell into absolute silence as 47 different civilizations confronted the uncomfortable truth that they had drastically underestimated the newest members of their galactic community. The footage showed not primitive savages stumbling through an alien environment, but disciplined warriors executing a complex military operation with devastating effectiveness. "How did they even reach the enemy vessel?" asked one delegate from the back rows. "Our intelligence indicated that all approach vectors were covered by defensive systems." The answer came from additional footage showing the human soldiers launching themselves directly from their ship using individual thruster packs, navigating through the debris field of destroyed vessels without being detected by the Void Swarm sensors. The tactic was so unconventional that the alien defensive systems had not even recognized it as an attack approach. Emperor Zarthul himself appeared via holographic transmission, his scaled features showing a humility that none of the assembled delegates had ever seen from the proud Zephyrian leader. "Honored counselors, I stand before you to formally acknowledge that my people owe their survival to these human warriors. 40,000 civilian lives were saved by beings that this council deemed unfit for military service." Commander Kyreth stood slowly, his massive form casting shadows across nearby delegates. I motioned to immediately rescind the military participation ban on humans. Furthermore, I propose that we invite human military advisors to review our current tactical doctrines. It appears we have much to learn about the nature of warfare. The motion received instant support from species that had previously shown nothing but contempt for human capabilities. Delegate after delegate stood to voice their agreement, each one recognizing that their fundamental assumptions about military science had been proven wrong by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Ambassador Vextar called for a formal vote, though the outcome was already clear from the mood in the chamber. All those in favor of rescinding Restriction Protocol 7 Alpha and inviting full human participation in Federation military operations, the vote was unanimous. On Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison received the priority transmission from the Federation Council while standing in his office overlooking the training grounds where human soldiers continued their exercises. The message was brief but profound in its implications for humanity's future among the stars. Admiral Morrison, the transmission began, the Galactic Federation Council hereby rescinds all previous restrictions on human military participation. We formally request immediate consultation regarding joint training operations and tactical doctrine review. Please advise when your forces can begin instructing Federation military units in your combat methodologies. Jake looked out his window at the soldiers practicing their maneuvers, unaware that the galaxy's perception of their species had changed forever. He turned to Commander Lisa Hayes, who was reading through dozens of similar messages from individual alien military commanders, requesting tactical advice and training opportunities. "Lisa," he said with a slight smile, "contact the Defense Department. Tell them we're going to need a much larger training facility." The story concluded with ships from dozens of alien species arriving in the Sol system over the following weeks, their crews eager to learn from the species they had once considered too primitive for modern warfare. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through superior technology or advanced evolution, but through the same qualities that had carried them from caves to the cosmos: adaptability, determination, and an absolute refusal to surrender. In the face of impossible odds, the galaxy learned that day that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimate, and that primitive does not necessarily mean ineffective. In a universe filled with energy weapons and adaptive defenses, sometimes the most devastating attack comes from something as simple as a bullet and a bomb.